live show is brought to you by Garden Express and Yates.
Garden Express are Australia's leading mail ordering service, offering a wide range of quality gardening products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show, you jump online and visit their website.
From indoor plant care to garden weed control products, Yates is the secret to a thriving garden. Later in the show, the team at Yates will share their top gardening tips and tricks for you to try this weekend. And for more advice to make your garden bloom, head to yates.com.au.
Well, good morning. Hello, welcome to the Garden Gurus Live. I'm Trevor Cochrane. It's great to be with you today. We have got a fantastic program, just packed full of lots of down-to-earth gardening advice. And we have Nika driving the ship for the first time today. So we're hoping, we've got a couple of little technical issues we're working through. We're hoping that they won't be too big an issue. Of course, we're here to answer all of your garden questions. We've got a fantastic $50 Garden Express gift voucher. Remember, with Garden Express, you can shop 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the best thing about it is they deliver direct to your door. So $50 is going to come in really handy. We should probably try and go to Rowan first up. Is that the plan, do you think? Angie first up. Let's see if we can get Angie and have a chat to Angie this morning. Hello, Angie. Oh, well, we can see you, but I can't hear you. This is one of those wonderful technical issues that we are talking about. And yes, it's not coming through. You know what we'll do, Angie? We'll try reconnecting. We'll get you to turn off and turn on, and we'll see whether that works. Shall we try Rowan in the meantime? See whether it's the same issue. This is a little technical thing. Rowan, good morning.
Hey, how you going?
Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Very good, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you.
I've never seen Nika dance, but she just did a dance.
I'm sure she's doing a fantastic job. Hard to do the first one.
She is doing a fantastic job. And we have a lot of people joining us, mate. We've got Lynn from Perth. We've got Nicole Enders from Brisbane. Kristen Rankin always joins us. Chrissy Marie, she's in sunny Tassie. We've got Chantel in Jervis Bay. It is everybody's from all over the country, mate. It's fantastic. What's the weather like in Melbourne today?
A little bit overcast, but not too bad. We had a little bit of spotty rain yesterday, but it's been nice weather.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, what's the weekend looking like?
To be honest, mate, I'm not actually sure. I'm pretty sure it's going to be good, but I couldn't tell you what the weather's going to be.
Tell me, what have you done with Chloe and David? They've been hidden away somewhere, haven't they?
They are, mate. They're over in the west at the moment. Did you have a chance to catch up with them?
I didn't even know they were here. I've got to. I'll put the note out at security at customs, and we'll get them held.
Yes, that's a good idea. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. They were off seeing a few different suppliers and stores and things, so they probably just didn't get a chance to.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely why we're not seeing them on screen today. Now, tell me, how'd the offers go last week?
Really good, actually. So last week we spoke about osteospermum and impatiens.
Yep.
They've done really, really well. We've still got good stocks because those ones we grew on ourselves. So there's plenty still there, guys, if you're looking for either of those. And we did touch base. Obviously, we spoke about the Beacon series of impatiens last week. And we also touched base a little bit on the New Guinea variety, which has a much larger flower. We've got some of those online too now. So if anyone's looking for the New Guinea version of the impatiens, we've got some of those there as well.
Those sun patiens, I've got them in my garden, and I got them about a year ago.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the best time of the year. So planting, we had a very, very long hot summer that dragged out over here, and putting them in the ground was a bit of a risk, and particularly because they were just tiny little plants.
Yeah.
But we put them into the ground over the winter. Typically New Guinea impatiens, at the altitude that my garden's at, they wouldn't survive through.
Yeah.
And I was looking through the garden over the last weekend, and just having a bit of a look around. And sure enough, they're all bouncing back from the cold weather,
Yeah.
not looking like they've been impacted at all. But of course, the great thing about these, and I've seen them in the US, where they're just planted out in full sun in places like Utah and Nevada and Arizona, which is really hot, full sun. And unlike the traditional New Guinea impatiens, they don't collapse, running out of enough moisture. They have a great resilience to that extreme condition. So that is definitely one to get your hands on.
Yeah, we've actually got the sun patients, I think, coming up shortly, in a couple of weeks maybe. They're just still growing on a little bit. So yeah, they're on their way, which is really good.
This week, we're going a little bit different. It's not flower colour. This for me is foliage colour. It's a very, very beautiful fern, isn't it?
I don't know if you can see that just creeping into screen there, but
oh yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about these beauties at them this week. So you can see that they've got some wonderful blue hues, and then the new growth is really green. So these guys are called the Davina fern, or Davana fern, sorry.
Yep.
Which is a Philobodium, which are just absolutely stunning. Trevor and I got a chance to catch up with our growers, been on nurseries a few weeks back now.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing place to be.
How about we play that clip for everybody to have a quick look at? It'll give you an insight into the nursery, and then we'll come back and chat about a special offer after that.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, let's press that button and see how we go. When it comes to plants and their foliage, and through plant selection and breeding, there's been a lot of plants that have been released with bright reds or white variegations, or even pinks, iridescent at times, and they look fantastic. But there's been a lack of blue foliage. That is until this plant was released, and it is absolutely stunning. It's got people raving about it, and it's in the running at the moment to win the Australian Plant of the Year at the Australian Horticultural Plant Trials. Bloomin Davana is a brand new fern that has a truly unique wavy leaf margin and voluminous appearance that provides the perfect indoor styling effect for decorators and indoor gardeners alike. And it's adaptable enough to go into a living wall, a hanging basket, or even a cane basket indoors. Interestingly enough, the older foliage has those blue hues. The new foliage comes with a bit of a lighter green through it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. If you're wondering how to care for these, don't worry, they're really tough. You do have to keep the water up to them, so make sure that they're in a self-watering pot or that you're watering on a frequent basis. Fertilising on a regular basis with something like fish emulsion is a great way to go, but they're great indoors, but also on the patio. Just don't stick them in full sun. You're probably asking yourself that million-dollar question. This is all good, but where do I get it? Well, my first stop is Garden Express, and they've got a great deal available for the Garden Guru viewers at the moment. 20% off 120mm potted Davana ferns. They're regularly $26.90, but now just $21.50. There's not many of these available. You can see what's been grown behind me, so get in quick. Wow, it's a great looking plant. Now, where's our friend Rowan? Can we get Rowan back? There he is.
I don't have to do anything now. You just explained everything I was going to explain.
I was going to say, pretty much it's all self-explanatory from that, isn't it? It is a magnificent fern. And for those people who don't know, it was introduced by a company called PMA, and I believe that it was discovered as a sport of plebodian plebodian. I think it was grown in Holland. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
and so plebodium. Oh God,
it's one that I struggle with. I struggle with that one.
Is a genus of ferns that have that really beautiful ruffled sort of foliage, and they are really cool. The thing about them that works really, really well is that they're incredibly hardy indoors. The foliage is actually quite leathery. It's got a real strong sort of foliage compared to typical ferns that can be very, very fragile. But when this first came out, Bonnie works for PMA, and Bonnie said, you got to try this fern. It's really cool. It's great. And we saw it, I think it was at Mifkus last year for the first time.
Yep.
And so I got some and I put them into the living wall that is downstairs in our office.
Yep.
And absolutely sensational, mate. A really, really impressive plant. The interesting thing is this particular genus is very much like the hare's foot ferns. So it's got these running rhizomes at the base.
I can probably show you.
Yeah.
Get it right.
There you go. And so the older they get, the more those hare feet rhizomes grow and hang over the pot. Yeah. And they just look amazing. They're a feature in themselves. And we don't talk about that. We're always talking about the wonderful blue hues in that foliage. But yeah, there's a lot to love about this plant.
Yeah, there certainly is. And I showed you earlier that this is a larger specimen that you can actually see the colours that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then this is the size that we've got on offer. Sorry, I'll just put that one down. This is the size we've got on offer for viewers this week. So that's a 120 ml pot. So that's that's the one that's got all the really, really healthy rhizomes that Trev was talking about. You can see them. You can see
them on the move.
Yeah, they're really stunning.
So just on that, mate, put them in a hanging basket and they all come around the outside of the hanging basket and hang down. They look unbelievable.
It would look amazing.
But as soon as you get those, my advice, folks, is you put them into a larger pot. But this is a larger fern. It's really quite robust, but fantastic indoors, fantastic in any kind of shady position.
Yeah, that's right. Just keep it out of direct sun, and it'll take off. You saw some of those big ones, the really large ones in the footage from bloomin. So really, really beautiful, stunning plant.
How impressive is that nursery, by the way, Rowan?
Amazing, absolutely incredible. And some of the plants that they're growing out of there are super stunning. I'm sure we'll be back there doing some more offers with them.
I was going to say, so what happened when I was there? What did you have to do for me, Rowan?
I had to shoot some different plants over to you. There was a alocasia, beautiful black foliage alocasia.
Alocasias, yeah.
I had to gather up and send back over to.
It's one of the tricks for you folks at home who are tuned in. It's one of the catches that comes with my job, and I'm sure you can relate to it. But when you go into a garden center, you're going in for the purpose of, let's say, you're buying tomatoes to plant this weekend, but when you go across and you look at it and you go, you know what, I like that, and I like that, and I like this. And that happened at Beermonds. There's so many beautiful indoor plants that I haven't seen or as rare as hen's teeth. So thank you for sending those over, Rowan. They arrived beautifully, by the way. They're fantastic.
That's great to hear. We're kind of good at that.
Now, the Davana, let's just go back to these plants. Regularly, they're about $27, $26.90.
Yeah, $26.90 is our regular price for the 120 ml pot that I'm holding here.
Yep.
We're doing those 20% off this week for $21.50 to Guru's viewers. So you're going to get a plant of that size for your $21.50.
For $21.50. Now, the great thing about Garden Express, of course, is if you jump online, you can get that, but there's all these other plants. It is the season. There's so many different plants, as well as, bulbs and garden accessories, everything you can think of. And the great thing about you guys is you deliver direct to the customer's door, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We do 24/7. You can jump on there. The website's always open, and we get orders out within a few days. It is a little bit busy at the moment because we've had a whole lot of sales. So all of our summer flowering bulbs, like dahlias and gladies and even hippies a little bit earlier, they're all sort of heading out the door at the moment. So it may take a little bit longer than usual just to get those orders out at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much going on at the moment. Nick is probably going to wrap us up any minute, but just quickly, we've just had our delivery of gerbers for the year. So they're beautiful, long-stemmed that you'd see flowering, cut flower gerbers.
Yeah, the cut flower gerbers. Yeah, they're rare as hen's teeth to get your hands on.
Look, I want to say we've got about 45 different colours, so there's so much to choose from. If you're interested in gerbers, definitely jump online at the moment.
Jump online. What do they cost, mate?
$12.90 each for a They come in grow cells. We pop them in a 50 mil forestry tuber just for protection, so they don't dry out. But they're already got plenty of foliage on them, and they should flower this season.
Straight into a pot as soon as they arrive, and bang, the flowers will be popping out before your very eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Rowan, we've got to keep moving. You're right. I'm getting the wind up. Nick has learnt a lot from Holly. She's pushing me around already. So, no, I'm joking. She's kind and gentle. Mate, it's great catching up. If anybody wants to take this offer up on the Davana fern, all they have to do, gardenexpress.com.au.
Yep, big banner on the homepage as usual, waiting there for you to get your hands on.
Awesome, mate. Thanks, Rowan. We'll look forward to seeing you next week, eh?
Yeah, always a pleasure, mate. See you next week.
Thanks, and thanks for your support. And I'll look out for Dave and Chloe. I'm surprised I haven't already had a phone call from the police to bail them out. So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, not too sure.
Obviously, they're obviously mellowing with age, those two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, have a great weekend, mate.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
very
too,
much.
guys.
Now, we are going to roll straight, I think, into the Yates segment with Angie. Hopefully, we've got Angie and we can hear her. Hello, Angie. Good morning. No, we've got the same.
Fingers crossed. Yay!
There you are.
I'm here. Oh, don't we love technology?
I tell you what, we can't live with it, but we can't live without it.
That's right. That's
Now,
right.
Angie, I wanted to ask you a question before we get into what you should be doing in the garden this week. We've just been talking about the Davana fern, that beautiful new fern that's been released by PMA, and the first release is basically going through Garden Express to people today. This is a really interesting fern. It's very robust, very hardy, and very vigorous. And one of the things that we don't think of with ferns often is supporting that growth, but it's really important. Have you got any recommendations?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of fern. If it's an Australian native fern, of which we have lots, then something like liquid dynamic lifter. So I have several ferns in hanging baskets, and that's what I feed the Australian native ferns with. But if it's not Australian native, then something like Thrive All Purpose, either the soluble or the liquid. So depending on what type it is, but particularly if they are in a pot or a hanging basket, they run out of nutrients really quickly, and all that lush foliage, we really need to make sure that that's supported with regular feeding. So that would be my two recommendations.
Yeah, great. We've got them in a living wall downstairs, and the living wall environment for a garden is very different to a normal pot garden, to a typical outdoor garden. It requires real control over that nutrient flow, and wherever you can use organics, because of that natural controlled slow release that they have, because it's a biological release process, it does a lot for the soil and the health of the plants in the thing. But one of the things that you do have to do is be feeding on a regular basis, because the organics are slow and they can deplete quite quickly because you get bursts of growth. So, a regular feed with that. When I first got into gardening, probably there were two fertilizers that were my go-to. So there's one that I would use called Phostrogen, which was an English branded fertilizer that was great for promoting flower and good growth in vegetables, good fruit growth. But the other side of it was, whenever you had anything that was indoors, anything that was foliage related, it was Thrive. And Thrive's got a high level of nitrogen, so it does encourage that beautiful, big, glossy, healthy leaf growth, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And did you know that Alan Seal actually invented Thrive? So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You might remember him talking about his aphids and his lace bugs. And he was just a star of gardening. And he used to work for Yates many, 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 many moons ago. And he actually invented Thrive. So there we go. So it's maybe 60 years old now, Thrive. And so we've got the Thrive All Purpose, which is really rich in nitrogen. So great all-purpose fertilizer. We've also got the Thrive Flower and Fruit, which is really high in potassium. So potassium is the nutrient that helps promote flowering and fruiting. So if you've got things like tomatoes or fruit trees, citrus, if you need to boost the flowering and the fruiting, that's the Thrive that I would recommend. But it's still got enough nitrogen to promote healthy leaf growth as well. So you can tailor your Thrive to whatever you're growing.
which is really what you guys have done with Thrive in because the Thrive fruit and flowers now my go-to. I don't think you can even buy Phostrogen anymore, but fruit and flowers basically equivalent formulation that delivers exactly the same results, if not better. I was going to say to you, there's been a lot of questions coming through, and before we go to the whole purpose of you being here and sharing your tips on what to do this weekend, one of the things that a lot of people experience if they don't act very proactively now is significant problems with diseases, particularly of foliage and the fruit as it develops on grapes. And I think maybe this week we've had something like 25 different questions come through via our social media pages saying, my grape leaves are starting to blister, or they're starting to twist, or they're getting this strange grey effect on the foliage. What's wrong? And disease control is critical with grapes, isn't it?
It is. So one of the things about grapes is they grow so lush and leafy, which really helps to trap moisture in the canopy and amongst the foliage. And so that's a recipe for diseases. Things like powdery and downy mildew. So powdery mildew looks like someone has sprinkled grey talcum powder on top of the leaves. Downy mildew tends to be underneath sort of tufty grey growths. You'll also see the leaves yellowing with downy mildew and with powdery as well. So really important to protect the leaves, because you can get a lot of the vine can defoliate if you've got a big enough infestation of mildew. So you can pick the odd leaf off if you're able to, but grapevines, they're a bit wild and woolly, so that's hard. So like a broad spectrum fungicide like Mancozeb Plus in the Yates range, that would be what I would recommend. It's got a combination of Mancozeb, and the plus bit of it is sulfur. And Mancozeb and sulfur together are really good to control a whole range of diseases, but powdery mildew and downy mildew on grapes, it's really ideal for. So get on top of it as soon as you see the symptoms, because you don't want to allow the disease to propagate spores and spread.
Yep. Now, particularly in Sydney at the moment, it's quite humid in Sydney over the last week or two. And that high level of humidity, lack of airflow, and then all those spores floating around, if you're not proactively spraying, and I'm telling people at the moment, I'm not sure, I'm probably doing the wrong thing here, you can correct me, but I'm saying to them almost every week, you should be giving your grapevines a bit of a spray at the moment over the foliage, give it a really good mix, and try and get a little bit under the foliage as well. And you will stop it from going crazy, and then hopefully we'll get the break of the this humid cycle, and those grapes will get through without being too badly affected. And by then, if there's a bit of breeze around, if there's a bit of drier sort of conditions, a lot less likely to be badly affected.
That's right, because if you do let it get away from you, not only are the leaves going to be affected, but the bunches of grapes that you've been hanging out for all season. So you get on top of it now, regular treatment, and just stay on top of the mildew, particularly if we've got humid, damp, moist weather. So if it's uncomfortable for us, that's ideal conditions for mildew.
Yeah. Any of the fungal diseases. I mean, the same goes with black spot and powdery mildew on roses as well. The other one that we're getting lots of questions, but it's the same treatment, isn't it?
Yes, you can use something like Mancozeb, also Yates Rose Gun or Yates Rose Shield, really good for treating the most common pests and diseases on roses, and anything that you don't eat, actually. It's a go-to for your gardenias and your azaleas and all the things that you don't eat in your garden. So Yates Rose Gun or Rose Shield is ideal. Good
advice. Now, Angie, I'm going to jump up and I'm going to run out of camera view, and I'm going to come running back, and I'm going to show you something. And you'll see we've got a local little coffee shop next door, and we go and get our coffees, and we've got lids on the top of the coffees. But if we take those lids off, I'll tell you what happens.
I'll have a flat white. Thanks, Trevor. Thank you very much. Oh, not a flat white. Oh, nice.
Our office is full of these. And if we don't put this stuff, can you see that stuff in the top of the pot?
Yep.
You know what that is, don't you?
It's gnat barrier.
That's exactly what it is. It's from Yates, and it stops those little black flies that get in your Chardonnay from getting in your Chardonnay.
They're so annoying. So there's two things that the fungus gnats do. One, they fly up your nose and into your Chardonnay, so the adults are annoying. But what the adults do is lay eggs into the potting mix. They hatch out into these tiny little grubs that you can't really see, and they eat through plant roots and also eat through the potting mix. So the adults are annoying, the larvae are dangerous to plants. So really important. And the gnat barrier granules, what they do is they provide a barrier for the adult fungus gnats from laying their eggs in the first place. So it helps cut that life cycle out. So ultimately no more gnat adults to get in your shardy.
And you know, you've got a specialised indoor plant potting mix as well, haven't you?
We do. We've got a couple of different mixes in the specialty range. There's an orchid mix, there's a cacti and succulent mix, but also a general one for plants and ferns. So if you've got your monstera or your peace lilies or your Zanzibar gems or whatever you've got going, premium specialty potting mix is the ideal way to go.
I'm not sure with that particular potting mix, the actual ingredients, but I know it's got a very high level of cocoa peat. And one of the reasons the fungus gnats go to the potting mix is it's the organic matter, particularly bark, where that's where they'll lay those eggs. And that's where the first food source is for those little grubs as they start off. And it's actually the barrier is the ability to cover over the top of that, to stop the gnats getting through. They can't get through that barrier, and I'm not sure what the material is. I think I could be wrong. Biomorphic silica, I suspect, or alternatively zeolite finely crushed. But the effect of those two particular products is that those minerals will act as a true barrier, and those gnats cannot break through it. It's actually quite a coarse, sort of sharp material they won't get through.
That's right. It's very uncomfortable for them. So, putting that barrier, and just as the name says, it's gnat barrier. So use those if you've got fungus gnats getting in your shardy.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that is driving a lot of people mad at the moment is broadleaf weeds in lawns, and particularly, you know, there's so much buffalo out there. You know, I saw a thing the other day, and I could be wrong. I'll double check my numbers because I was looking at it going, no way. But I think there's been 100 million square metres of Sir Walter sold in Australia.
That's a lot of football fields.
That's crazy. You know, there must be 50% of home gardens are using Sir Walter buffalo in their front or backyard or both. And that talks to the popularity of that particular grass and buffalo grasses. But they're treated quite differently to the fine leaf grasses, aren't they?
They are. Buffalo can be a little bit of a diva when it comes to some weed killers. So it's really important, if you do have a buffalo lawn, that you use a buffalo safe broadleaf weed killer. So say, for example, Yates Weed and Feed for buffalo lawns. It says it on the front of the pack. So if you know that you've got a buffalo lawn, definitely use something that is buffalo safe. If you don't know what type of grass that you have, it's safer to assume that it is buffalo and still use the buffalo safe weed killer. And that's going to help knock off all those broadleaf weeds that are ready to ruin your lawn, like the cape weed and the plantain and the lamb's tongue. You've got any clover left over. Hopefully people have got their bindi under control. But the weeds just ruin the look of a nice, beautiful buffalo lawn that you might have spent a lot of money on installing. So don't let the weeds ruin the party, but just make sure you're using something that's safe for buffalo.
No, I think it's the best bit of advice. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they use the wrong spray on their buffalo. It'll often turn it quite yellow. Sometimes it can kill off patches. So make sure you're getting the right product. And if you're not sure, if you think, oh, look, I've got a zoysia grass, is that a broadleaf or is that a fine leaf? Then you're best just to go for the buffalo spray, because you can use the buffalo spray on a fine leaf grass as well, and it'll take out those broadleaf weeds, but you can't do the reverse. So
that's right.
Important bit of advice. This weekend, I am doing something that I'd normally be a month earlier doing, and that is planting tomatoes in my garden. Any tips?
Look, really make sure that your soil preparation is good. So soil preparation is going to get your tomatoes off to a great start. So when I plant my tomatoes, I'm mixing some fragrant handfuls of dynamite lifter into the soil, and then mulching around them. So whether it's bark chips or sugarcane or lucerne or pea straw, whatever you've got, that really helps to keep the soil moist. So it's really important for tomatoes to have consistent soil or potting mix moisture, because that helps reduce the chance of blossom end rot. As the tomatoes develop, just be on the lookout for caterpillars. Caterpillars can invade the fruit, and the last thing you want to do is cut open a tomato when there's half a caterpillar there, but they can also chew through the leaves as well, and particularly if it's going to be humid, diseases like the mildews, the leaf spots, the blights. So water gently at the base of your tomatoes, and that stops the spores splashing up. But if you do get some diseases, something really easy to use is the Yates tomato and veggie dust. So you just sprinkle it on, you can see where you've dusted, it's ready to use, there's no mixing. That's my go-to for tomatoes, because I'm very time poor, I've got lots to do, so I just sprinkle on the tomato and veggie dust, and I know it's going to protect the tomatoes from the most common pests and diseases.
It's my go-to as well, and it's such a broad range of controls. It really does protect them super well. I will be doing that this weekend. Angie, I know that we are going to have to go because we are getting overwhelmed with questions flying through, but we will be back next week, and I'm hoping you can join us again.
We'll do. Thanks for having me, Trevor, and happy gardening, everyone.
You too. Have a great weekend. Just looking, everybody's asking questions. You've got questions, and they're coming from all over Australia. There's quite a few new faces, and of course, all of our old friends as well. And I don't mean that by age. I just mean that by the time that we've been friends. This is pretty cool. Let's have a bit of a look through questions. Shall we roll through? Shall we get going, Nika? Okay, Nick is doing a great job today. Matara Jayarinda, hello, you're in Balcombe Hills in New South Wales. I have a vine tree, second year. I'm not sure what a vine tree is. I can see some fruits popping up. Should I prune some leaves or get some more fruits? Or to get more fruits? I do not know what you mean by a vine tree. That's a bit of an unusual question. Mattia, can I ask you to do us a favour? I think it'd be worthwhile you sending me a picture of the tree that you're referring to, because if you're referring to grapes, then it's definitely not a tree, but I'm really not sure. It's not enough information for me. A photograph will help. Sandy Jewell was last week's winner of our competition. She got a follow-up on last week's mystery creeper question. Last week, put up a photo of mystery creeper. I think I've solved the name. Angel pod milk vine. Let's have a bit of a look at that picture. And it does look like a milk vine. There's quite a few of them. I don't honestly know though, because I had this moment afterwards where I looked at it and I thought, now if you're in the tropics and you're in Brisbane, it could also be a granadilla. Granadillas are a tropical passion fruit. And they have a really big passion fruit. There's a couple of different types, a sweet and a giant. And it also kind of looks a little bit like that. So maybe it is the milk vine. The mystery is not solved, I don't think, just quite yet. There's still some questions in my head. Dominica May, hello. We've got 7 teddy bear magnolia trees, approximately 6 years old. I've noticed they have some yellowing in the leaves. Do I need to be concerned about them? Dominica, I have got the same tree in my garden. These are really mature trees now. They'd be 10 years old. When this teddy bear magnolia was first released, I can remember the nursery that released it sent me some beautiful plants in 3 or 5 mil tubs, all the way from Victoria to Perth too. And they turned up and planted in the garden. I read the instructions. They only get to 4 meters. And here we are 10 years down the line. I've just gone and cut 3 meters out of the top of them, and they're still 6 meters tall. They are massive plants. And at the moment, this time of the year, as we're at this really critical moment in time, and the best way to explain this is that the plants for the last 6 months in most of Australia have been growing at optimal moisture levels. That is, we've been getting rainfall all the time. The soil moisture, it's not saturated, but it's about as saturated as it should be. The only thing is, as we move into summer, rainfall backs off and we start to see the soil moisture levels start to decline. And the trees are really incredible, including native trees. So you'll see the red gums and the jarrah trees and all of the things like your beautiful lemon scented gums, they will all start dropping leaves. And it can be quite, it can continue on now until January, and it can be really quite intense where you end up with a big layer of these evergreen trees dropping their leaves. Guess what? The teddy bear magnolia does it as soon as that moisture level starts to drop. They have big leaves, they've got a big furry base, which is how they get that name, teddy bear. When I say furry base to the leaf, and it's reddish, and it looks kind of like teddy bear, teddy bear kind of fur. And they will drop their leaves now. You will see yellowing of the leaves. You shouldn't be concerned. I think you'll find that it'll be followed with some flushes of new growth, but it's all about the soil moisture levels now starting to change in the soil, and the plants are actually correcting. Basically, they're saying, I've been supporting so many thousands of leaves, let's say 10,000 leaves, because I've had this much moisture in the soil. But now that moisture is declining, those leaves I can no longer support, so I'm going to drop some of the oldest ones. And it's always the oldest ones you'll see yellow, so they're usually the bottom leaves, and it'll drop them onto the ground. If it's top leaves, that tends to be a nutritional issue. So I would suspect that it's not that. I suspect it's just like mine at home. They're dropping some of the older leaves now as they're adjusting to the soil moisture changes. And it doesn't matter if you compensate with irrigation or anything, it will always be the same problem. All right, shall we keep rolling? Julie Oyston, hello, you're in Wollongong. You sent us some photos again as well. Thank you, everybody who sends those photos through. It does make a difference. I would love some help. A box hedge that we've had for 10 to 12 years, slowly going brown in patches. One plant's almost died as per the video. Let's have a bit of a look at this a little bit further. Scroll down just a bit for me, please. Oh, yeah. Now, this could be one of two things. It could be, so this is a Dutch box, and it could just be that you have got a bit of a fungal disease sitting in there. In fact, they kind of look like they probably have, to be quite honest. And it's not an unusual thing. You do need to treat it, and we were just talking about Mancozeb Plus. This is a really good way to do it. But if you were to look inside that and pull the foliage apart, just be careful that there's not these little white bumps all over the inside, because they are susceptible to a scale known as Chinese white waxy scale, and it's a really difficult one to control. You can only really spray horticultural oils, so white oil, eco oil, one of those, and you have to drench the plant basically on the inside, and it suffocates the scale. But I think this could be fungal. I do think it's dying off in patches, and it does look, particularly the photo on the left. So let's see how we go. I would have a bit of a look, make sure it's not the scale, and if it's not scale, go to the Mancozeb Plus and give it a good shot. Catherine Barker, hello, you're in Toowoomba, or you're in Queensland. Ooh, what a beautiful tree. My forest pansy is slowly growing taller, but it looks a little bottom heavy. Can I, or should I cut the bottom branches off? You'd only cut them off if they're getting in the way of you trafficking through that area. If not, I would leave it. The plant will naturally grow taller. And if you've got the room, use the base, because you're getting to see all that foliage nice and low and up close. It really is a beautiful plant. I think this was introduced by Fleming's Nurseries some years ago. I do have a couple in my garden. They are not as beautiful in their nature and structure as the one that you've got here at the moment. They are slowly establishing, but that's a ripper plant. So that's Cercis forest pansy. What else is that known as? It'll come to me. It's got beautiful pink flower as well. The Judas tree. There we go. All right. Not so bad this morning. Lynn Winstanley, hello, you're in Claremont. That's over here in West Australia. Notice that whenever I hand water my garden, lots of white butterflies and grey moths fly out. That is called the diamond moth, and it is in plague proportions here in and around Perth at the moment. And if you have any members of the brassica family, you'll be suffering. Now, the reason this has occurred is because Western Australia, the southwest of Western Australia, has massive canola crops, and canola are sometimes known as rapeseed, and they are all from that same family of plants, the brassicas. And what happens is this moth is like blowing out in massive amounts out in the farmlands. Of course, it spreads. It comes into the city. It attacks. Doesn't have canola here. What it does do is it has a lot of brassicas for all of us trying to grow cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale. We are just getting decimated with this, and it's not an easy one to control, unfortunately. You can use your successes, your Derris dusts, and what else have we got? So, kind of any of those sort of those caterpillar kind of controls. But the funny thing is, in about 2 weeks' time, the weather's going to warm up a lot more, and it'll break the cycle. They actually die out. Doesn't help you if your plants are already damaged, but that's where it's coming from. Hopefully that answers your question. Marcia Blake, staying in WA for a second, you're down in Harvey, which is a beautiful, beautiful part of WA. I've got some black spot on my roses. What would you recommend to treat it with, please? And I think we talked about that a little bit earlier on. Probably the specialised sprays are a little bit stronger than that general sort of fungicide of Mancozeb Plus. So the specialised rose sprays from Yates are a pretty good way to go. That was really good advice from Angie. So hopefully that helps you, Marcia. Get the spray on, you can't go wrong. Christine McCormack, hello. I've got a blood orange tree. It's in the garden. I've noticed a couple of dozen blood orange fruit growing. They reach the size of a little bigger than a sesame seed overnight. However, they disappear. My question is, are they being eaten by a bug, grub? There are none left on the tree. I'm in the Perth Hills. All right, I have the blood orange in my garden as well. We're just beginning into fruit set, which is what you're looking at. And what it's basically telling you is this plant is not setting the fruit. Now, when it flowers, it really should set fruit. There's no reason why that fruit shouldn't be setting. All you're seeing is those little tiny fruit, and they're aborting and dropping on the ground. And at sesame seed size, just says that they haven't pollinated and they haven't set. There's a couple of tricks. One is to stress the tree. So it's to make sure there's no water getting to the base of that tree, and try and stress it as much as you can. And that will trigger a process where it might flower a little bit more, and it will try and hang on to fruit. But what it's saying to me more than anything is that you're probably using a high nitrogen fertilizer. And I think that what you've got to take a look at is reducing the amount of nitrogen, that greening agent encourages lots of green growth, and encourage fruit growth. So you want to increase your phosphorus and your potassium, particularly potassium, that K in the NPK, vitally important for fruit set and also the development of the fruit. So look at the fertilizer you're using. I did have an instance not that long ago in the Perth Hills where somebody brought it up, and it was just a really interesting situation that occurred. What happened was the people planted a whole series of fruit trees in this area that had an old sewage, I'm trying to think what they call it, leach drain in. And one of the things it had been sort of decommissioned and was kind of buried, but there's huge amounts of nitrogen in the soil. So the trees are growing magnificent. They look fantastic. They still had a pretty good moisture supply, but they were not producing any fruit at all. And that's because they didn't need to. All they needed to do was produce growth and get really large. And it's only when they got stressed that they suddenly triggered, and that beautiful shape of the tree, the larger tree, was able to support a really good crop. And it went from being very poor cropping to very high cropping in 12 months. And it was simply a change of the fertilizer and the fact that the trees had really taken up most of the nitrogen out of the soil. So a little bit of background. Sandy Jewell, community garden in Brisbane has always had dramas with the grapevine. That was the one that we answered with Angie earlier on, and it's a really important thing at the moment. Wherever you've got high humidity, you need to be spraying weekly with this fungicide to make sure you're on top of it. Sandra PG, hello. Just sort of a major problem with my frangipani. Has what I found is rust. And interestingly enough, and I'm not sure where you are, Sandra, but if you're in the tropics, this is another problem. It's a fungus. It is prominent on evergreen frangipanis, not as much on the traditional acutifolia, the sort of pointed foliage varieties. But once it gets in, you've got it for the whole season. It's really hard to get rid of. So get in, grab. There are some really good fungicides for rust, but they're specialised, and you need to go into your local garden centre. I think that will help. Comment from Pam Collins. Hello, I've got so many white snails in my garden. Followed your instructions. Got the Yates snail pellets. Looking great now. Good news. Okay, that's an iron-based snail pellet, and it's very, very effective. Really, really good feedback. Thank you, Pam. Lavinia Neve. Hello, I'm looking at getting a tree for my front yard. I'd like it to do shade. Looking pretty good. What would you suggest? Couple of things I'm not sure about here, Lavinia. What's the aspect? Do you face south? Do you face north? Do you face east? What state are you in? Where are you coming from? So the thing that you need to think about with tree selection is, I'll give you an example of what I mean. So if you are north facing, northeast facing, I would be going for an evergreen tree. Now, the reason I would do that is because it'll provide you shade during the summer months and cool your house. So from an energy consumption point of view, you're reducing air conditioning because your house is actually naturally cooler because of the shade. During the winter, however, they drop their leaves and the sun comes through and it warms your house. So it makes an awful lot of sense. If you're on the south side of the house, I'd be thinking evergreen. And the reason is the shade will always go in the other direction. It's not going to shade over your house all the time. It'll look fantastic all year round. So this is kind of, if you said, look, I love magnolia flowers, you can get evergreen magnolias like teddy bear that we were just talking about, and you can get deciduous. I'd be thinking about the deciduous if it was on that northeast facing side in a cooler climate. In a warmer climate, you might want to think about some other deciduous tree varieties because it just depends where you are. So, Lavinia, the message here is give me a bit of background where you are, because if you're in the tropics, we're going to have a different discussion altogether. Australia's a big place. We've got lots and lots of climatic zones. So it's pretty crazy stuff, really. You think about it, plant selection is everything. Do your research, go and have a look in your local garden centre. Ask them for some examples of those trees before you make the purchase, because a tree is an investment unlike any other. They are so, so good. All right, how are we going here? We're ticking over? All right. Now, there's a few people there's a few people passing comment, and I think one, Andy and Mandy from the Kalamunda Garden Festival, Magnolia teddy bear, that one that I think originally we were told it only gets to about 6 metres. These are 11 metres in height. That's absolutely crazy, 11 metres. I reckon mine were pretty close to that as well. We've just bought them down, and what it'll do is it bushes them up. It sort of gets them nice and compact and bushy. So that's actually not a bad thing. That's kind of feedback is the sort of thing that really does help a lot of people when it comes to planning, because there are some other varieties that are actually really broad and low spreading of the magnolias, and there's so much variation and so many varieties now. So there really is a lot of variation. Annie Michelatis, she's gone so much. Thanks so much for the information on the canola fields and moths. Very interesting. Explains why there's such big numbers of moths in the Perth metropolitan area. It's not a big moth, by the way. It's just there's millions of them. And one of the things that brings insects in this time of the year is leaving bright outdoor lights on. So my advice is always, unless you need to, don't do it. What I think we might do is we might go to our, because we're not far off finishing the show, but you would have seen this photo. I ducked out into the garden this morning, picked this. There are 3 things. Strawberry is the obvious one. It's buried somewhere in the middle there. But these white things, I've got a few people guessing, and they are a mulberry. And there's some people thought that they might be an Australian native mulberry or a green mulberry. This is what they call the white chartreuse mulberry. This is an Indian mulberry, very long. One of the interesting things about this is it's about 90% fructose, so 90% fruit-soluble sugars. So you have 10 of these and you're hyperactive. The reason people love this particular kind of mulberry, apart from being a beautiful tree, is that with the white, there's no staining. And that's the downside to the black mulberries or the red. There's actually a red version of this that I absolutely love, and it's a dwarf tree in my garden, about the same sort of length, maybe a little bit longer and a little bit plumper, and that is the red chartreuse, and another Indian mulberry. This is super sweet. That one is actually it's like sherbet. That's maybe the best way to describe it. It's got a very different flavour, and Nika's never had these before, have you, Nika? No. So we're gonna see. There's Nika. Say hi, Nika.
Hey everyone! It's my first time to actually see this kind of fruit.
All right, give it a try. Tell us what you think. How sweet is this?
Ooh, oh my gosh, it's super sweet. Like this is the sweetest fruit I've ever tasted.
There you go. So we should call it the Trevor mulberry, shouldn't we? Super sweet? Maybe not. And of course, blueberries. At the moment, blueberries are in everywhere, all over the country. And one of the nicest things I think I've done in my garden is to create a bit of a blueberry hedge. And it's just an endless supply of blueberries right through until Christmas time. And there's certain times when blueberries are pretty cheap. They're about $3 or $4 a punnet at the moment. I'm probably picking a punnet a day. But at certain times, they're really expensive, $6 or $7 a punnet. I'm still picking a punnet a day. So these bushes on the initial investment have actually been a fantastic return. And of course, they're homegrown. They're sweet, or sometimes if you pick them a bit too early, they're a little tart. But they are absolutely delicious, and that's what it's all about. All right, I think we just about finished for the day. I think, Nika, we need to pick a winner. And there's been some pretty good questions come through. But I really appreciate Pam Collins coming back, because Pam came back and sort of said, look, I had this problem with this was last week, with these little coastal white snails, and they're almost impossible to get rid of. But this new iron snail pellet is really, really effective. It's iron-based, released by Yates. Doesn't have those horrible toxic chemicals that were traditionally used in snail pellets. And the benefit of that, of course, is that you're not putting poisons into the ground, particularly the ground where plants are growing, producing stuff that you're eating. Really important. So, keep your eye out for that. Thank you very much. We will give you today's $50 gift voucher to go shopping at Garden Express. Of course, gardenexpress.com.au, your one-stop garden shop. And they've got those amazing Devana ferns that really are beautiful. If you want a really hardy, beautiful fern, then that's the one to go for. All right, Nick, I think we're just about done for the day. So what we're going to do is we're going to say thank you very much for coming and joining us on this Friday morning. We've covered a lot of ground, a lot of questions, some pretty cool sort of tips that came from the team at Yates, and of course, great deal with Garden Express. We are back this Saturday on Channel 9 with the Garden Gurus. Got a terrific episode this weekend. You'll see some things that are, one, entertaining, but two, really make gardening easy and delivering some incredible results. So the programs just get better and better and better as we move towards the end of the season. We are going through till about the second week of December this year. So got a few more episodes for you. It is 4:30 p.m. on Channel 9. Check your local guides, because sometimes it does vary by state depending on what's going on at state level. The programmers do sometimes juggle us around a little bit. We are back next week. We've got another great episode of the Garden Gurus Live, a chance for you to ask your question. Remember, when you post your question, send us a photograph. Don't be scared to do that. It really does help. Make sure you tell me where you're from. It makes a huge difference to the answer. We've got some really interesting things. If you listen to today's session, you'll notice that anybody who's in Sydney, Northern Queensland, they're experiencing high humidity, lots of fungal diseases, lots of other issues. They really are, they're very different to what's going on in the south of the country. And that's really important to keep your head, around the difference in our climatic zones and the kinds of problems that do occur as a consequence. If you want any more information about gardening at all, visit our website. It's an amazing resource. Of course, Facebook, we answer your garden questions. And if you want to watch programs from the past, go to our YouTube channel. It's a great source. That's thegardengurus.tv. I think we are just about done. We've got episode 8 this weekend of the Garden Gurus, and we'll see you next Friday for the next session of the Garden Gurus Live. I'm Trevor Cochrane. Big thanks to Nika. We will see you all next week. Goodbye.